Around 2 months ago, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan announced a major shakeup to their pledge goal of donating 99% of their Facebook shares within their lifetime to their foundation. This made a lot of people very angry, and was widely considered a bad move. The focus of the controversy was the fact that the business leaders would be moving their foundation attention away from social issues and towards, in their own words, going all in on AI-powered biology for our next chapter. So, yeah. A man whose company is going all in on AI investment and has said he really wants to live forever is channeling his charitable work almost exclusively towards AI that will help people live forever. Now, people can and should be able to put their money towards whatever they think is important. But of course, the problem here is that this little pet project is going to have questionable real-world benefits for most people while simultaneously emitting serious tax revenue. Now, despite the unflattering headlines and understandable backlash, the Zuck is actually far from the worst offender in this little game. Large tax-deductible donations have been used to dictate the direction of scientific research, launder reputations, and ironically, be used to shape public policy further away from the idea of just taxing these people instead. On top of this, there is a new type of quasi-venture charity that is quietly becoming much more popular amongst some of the richest people in the world. There are a few examples that honestly need to be getting a lot more attention than they are. Just look at something like OpenAI. Remember when it was supposed to be a nonprofit dedicated to the good of humanity? Whatever happened to that, you might wonder? Well, it may end up being the guinea pig for a lot of new technologies to follow the same path. The spending, regulatory hurdles, and public pushback has gotten to a point where it raises the question: at what point would it be easier and cheaper to just pay the damn taxes?
Tech billionaire Michael Dell and his wife Susan announced that they were also donating more than $6 billion to allow an additional 25 million children.
The Waltons are donating $50 million to Teach for America.
Eric Schmidt and his wife Wendy funding 4 new telescope projects collectively known as the Schmidt Observatory System.
The reason why we're doubling down on biology is not only did we achieve what we said we were going to do, and when we set out on these projects, it actually delivered more than we thought we were going to.
This is a space that there's just going to be a huge amount of leverage with AI.
Do you think you'll live forever, Mark?
That is an interesting question.
Now, I want to start off this video by saying that I have read your comments, and I know that you all say I can be a bit of a Grinch. Now, in my defense, one of the most important parts of critical analysis is being critical. But you're right, I could be a bit more positive about things. So I promised in this video about how modern charitable giving has become a blight on real societal progress. There actually will be a lot of positive takeaways. But before that, we need to address 3 major problems with our record generosity. According to aggregated data from Giving USA, total charitable contributions to 501c nonprofits and charitable institutions reached $593 billion in 2024. We don't yet have the data from 2025, but the trend is clearly upwards. In a vacuum, this is clearly a good thing. Not only does giving to charity help social issues that may not be addressed by government spending, it also increases civic-mindedness, and there is one other positive that comes out of this all as well. If people are finding money to give to charity, it's normally a pretty good indication that their own financial lives are stable enough to lose a few dollars here and there without putting themselves in serious distress. Today, the first problem has come from the fact that the concentration of charitable giving has somehow outpaced even regular wealth inequality. Accounting for inflation, in 1993, households that earn less than $200,000 a year made up 77% of all charitable giving. Extremely wealthy households making over $1 million a year contributed just 10% to the total pot. By 2019, the average household share had halved to just 33%, and contributions from those on over $1 million had more than quadrupled, all within the span of just 26 years. I also say average households, like people bringing home $200,000 a year, are not doing better than most, but this is what the researchers used. One last thing is that, yes, this data only goes up to 2019, because this information is notoriously hard to produce, but more on that later. Anyway, for now, the point is that charities have increasingly become extremely dependent on a very small pool of donors and their own discretion. In fact, the vast majority of large charitable contributions are made to foundations that the wealthy donors themselves control. The problem this creates was made very clear when the Chan-Zuckerberg initiative last refocused their efforts. When they stopped funding social causes to reshift their focus towards science, a school that was exclusively reliant on them closed down overnight, displacing 400 underprivileged students. In a press release, it was announced that the school was closing down due to a lack of funding, without pointing to the logical irony that they were the funding. In cases like this, it is important to remember that a large chunk of projects like that school were still indirectly funded with taxpayer dollars, not directly through government budgets, but rather indirectly through omitted revenue. If a school for underprivileged children truly was necessary, just taking a portion of the tax concessions given to something like Zuckerberg's Institute could publicly fund it and remove the possibility that it gets closed down overnight because the tastes of two people change. It sounds bad. But again, comparatively, while it makes it really easy to dislike him, Zuckerberg is still far from the worst offender in this game. It gets much, much worse. The organizational structure that Zuckerberg uses for his charitable giving isn't actually officially a foundation at all. Now that means that the tax concessions are not as immediate as more typical charitable family foundations, but getting rid of this status has given them a lot more flexibility. They still control the shares they donate. They don't need to disclose their executives, they can invest and receive returns, and they can make direct political donations. Now, credit where credit is due. They are a lot more transparent than they need to be given that this is effectively just a private company. But they are also setting a blueprint for what less public-facing billionaires could do with similar initiatives. And at the end of it all, it's not like they are giving up their tax deductions. So it's time to learn how money works to find out at what point it would just be easier to pay taxes instead. This week's video is sponsored by Rocket Money. Everything feels more expensive this time of year. Between travel, gifts, and hosting, I noticed my spending creeping up without really understanding where my money was actually going. And that made it harder to plan ahead or feel confident about my finances. Rocket Money is an app that helps you see all your finances in one place, which has been a game changer for me. Instead of bouncing between accounts, I can open one app and get a clear picture of what's coming in, what's going out, and how everything fits together. One thing I didn't realize until I started using it was how many subscriptions I was paying for but barely using. Rocket Money helped me stay on top of those and made it much easier to manage them, which alone has given me more peace of mind. I also really like how it shows spending insights because it's helped me be more intentional instead of guessing where my money went each month. This has been especially helpful during the holidays when expenses add up quickly, and it's made me feel a lot more prepared heading into the new year with better financial habits already in place. If you want to try it yourself, go to rocketmoney.com/howmoneyworks to get started. You can click the link in my description, and you can unlock even more features when you sign up for premium. Okay, so even if it was only around for 9 years and then unceremoniously shut down overnight, you could still make the argument that a school for underprivileged children in an expensive area like Palo Alto did some good for society while it was operating with no glaring conflicts of interest. But who really benefits off other forms of charitable giving is a little less clear. At least it could be argued that Zuckerberg is just shifting his money around to whatever is trending at the time. 10 years ago, it was DEI and serving underprivileged communities, and today it's AI vaporware. But there are other groups that are a lot more deliberate with their giving. The second major problem is that these contributions are often used to win over more than just hearts and minds, and the IRS. They are often explicitly pushing a questionable or just unpopular agenda. The Waltons of the Walmart family fortune have actually committed to their school funding for more than 9 years, but at the same time, their contributions are being used to fund policy debates around charter schools versus traditional public schooling. Other contributions are even more direct than that. Ideological think tanks across the political spectrum, like the Heritage Foundation, Brookings Institute, and the Center for American Progress, also take in millions of dollars every year in deductible contributions. Even when the agenda is not so transparent, the true benefits are often equally unclear. If you spend enough time going around between concert halls, prestigious schools, or museums, you are going to see lots of different family names on lots of different buildings. Now, this is clearly a case where your own personal opinions could be different than someone else's. But as charitable giving has become more concentrated amongst very wealthy people, a lot more of the spending is going towards projects and infrastructure that will overwhelmingly be enjoyed by other wealthy people. Ballet theaters, curated art galleries, and endowments for high-end schools are all nice things to have, but there are arguably things that average people need more immediately right now. A famous, or perhaps now infamous, example of this is Harvard's enormous endowment that is used to fund buildings, research, and scholarships. Donations to this endowment are generally tax-deductible, but there is an argument to be made that people attending Harvard generally no longer need a leg up, and their existing scholarships could easily be funded through their existing $57 billion if they really wanted to. Again, the value of these investments is a matter of personal opinion. And even most of you watching still thought that donations should be tax deductible. But if they are, it's important to remember that a tax break is effectively the same as a tax incentive. And if you wouldn't personally support taxpayer money being prioritized towards these projects, that is effectively the same problem. Something like Zuckerberg's shift into AI-powered health research would also arguably fall into this category. A lot of great health outcomes could be achieved right now by just funding simple healthcare for people who can't afford it. Highly advanced medical treatments to extend human lifetimes are clearly something that are of interest to wealthy people directly. The true public benefit of these donations versus the lost public benefit of the tax revenue is even more questionable when it comes to gifted assets. One of the most popular charitable categories amongst wealthy philanthropists is supporting the arts. But the value of art is famously a subjective gift. There have been a few great videos made here on YouTube about the sneaky tricks that it enables, and I will leave a link to them below. But the simple rundown is that you buy a painting for $10,000, wait a few years, and feature that artwork around some of the galleries you support, and have that painting revalued later for millions of dollars and then donate it at that value to one of these foundations. You just bought yourself $1 million tax deduction for 10,000 real dollars. Now, maybe you still think, if some rich guy wants to stick his name on a building that's open to the public, or some elite students, or put their weird artwork in a gallery, just let them. The reality is that a lot of these people pay ridiculously low tax rates anyway, so the deductions were never the primary motivation in the first place. But it gets worse. OpenAI was initially founded as a nonprofit organization with the stated goal of researching artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity. The donations made to start the organization's early research were tax deductible, as they were with every designated nonprofit. Now, the OpenAI nonprofit still exists as a minority 26% owner of the for-profit subsidiary within this complex corporate structure. But the scope and goals of OpenAI have clearly changed as it ramps up for a predicted IPO. And the group's CEO speaks very openly about the value he is bringing to his shareholders.
How can the company with $13 billion in revenues make $1.4 trillion of spend commitments? You know, and you've heard the criticism,
First
Sam.
of all, we're doing well more revenue than that. Second of all, Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a buyer. I just, enough. Like, you know, people are. I think there's a lot of people who would love to buy OpenAI shares. I don't think you would,
including myself. Including myself.
People who talk with a lot of like breathless concern about our compute stuff or whatever that would be thrilled to buy shares. So I think we could sell, you know, your shares or anybody else's to some of the people who are making the most noise on Twitter, whatever.
Other big foundations have clearly seen this lesson play out, and they have learned a lot from it. You can charitably give money to research some amazing new technology. And well, if it doesn't work out, you can talk about your philanthropic contributions to cutting-edge research and enjoy your tax deductions. But if the technology does work, you can shift it into a for-profit company that you maintain significant control over. In such a case, you may retroactively lose your tax deductibility. But if, I don't know, as a random example, you just happen to fund AI research to massively slow down aging, well, a few $1 million in tax refunds would be meaningless compared to the potential market value of this technology. This has the potential to reshape long-shot venture capital to make it a game of, if it wins, the investors win, and if it fails, the philanthropists still get their pre-tax deductions on their seed round invested capital. Now, technically, this is illegal. To qualify for tax deductibility, the donor cannot get any tangible benefit from their donation, but clearly there are ways around these rules. If a highly valuable new technology is developed, it can just be licensed out to a separate organization with no nonprofit restrictions. This business move is already becoming very popular with companies looking to skirt around antitrust regulation. Instead of directly gaining ownership of a target organization through a share buyout, be it a competitor or a nonprofit research organization, the investors will just hire all of the talent from them and then pay a big licensing fee to use their IP. Analysts have dubbed this move the Halo acquisition, or hiring and licensing out, which is allowing mostly large tech companies to buy potential competitors without officially having to acquire their business. In a case where a nonprofit develops an equally marketable technology, their in-house talent could just be hired across and the research licensed out. Now, effective regulators are supposed to step in and challenge these schemes before they become present. But, well, that's probably not going to happen. Go and watch this video next to find out why, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.